All right, some exciting drone news regarding the Mavic 3 Pro. You can now purchase the DJI RC remote controller, which comes with the Mavic 3 Mini 3 Pro, and you can link the RC controller to the Mavic 3 Pro. So the Mini 3 Pro introduced this lighter version of a kind of look-alike smart controller. You can now link it to the Mavic 3 Pro, which this type of remote should have been the version, in my opinion, when they released the Mavic 3 Pro with the DJI RC 1 remote, which was that bigger remote, which, do I have it here? Hold on a second. So DJI, when they released the Mavic, what is it called? The Mavic 3 Pro, they had two versions. They had the regular Mavic 3 Pro that came with this controller, and then you would have to put your phone on top. And then they had the Cine version, the Mavic 3 Cine version, and then you would get the black smart controller, which is not this one. It's more of a, it's full screen right here, and it's got a bunch of ports here, HDMI ports, USB-C ports, all kinds of ports that you can hook up all the stuff. But now the Mini 3 Pro came out with the with this light version of the RC controller, and it includes a screen. And I always thought that the Mavic 3 Pro had kind of downgraded the remote when they introduced the regular, just a basic Mavic 3 Pro by having this controller. They should have had this version, this lighter version of a smart controller. But now you can purchase it for, I believe, what is it, $309, and you are able to link. It's compatible now with the Mavic 3. So until now, the Mavic 3 users have had only two remote options, control options: the DJI RC N1, which requires drone operators to mount their smart drones to their remote controller, and this is the DJI RC1, and the DJI Smart controller, which I was talking about. It's the black version with the screen similar to this one, but it had a lot more things included in the RC controller, and that runs, I think, about $1,000, maybe more. So now you can get this new controller that came out, which I think is really nice as a light version to the smart controller for $309, and link it to your Mavic 3, and there you go. Now you have a much nicer version of your basic standard Mavic 3 Pro, instead of getting a crazy remote controller that probably is not for you, and you're just looking for a regular controller. Now, with all that said, I'm gonna throw a little curveball here, because although I thought about that this controller was a little downgrade to the Mavic 3 Pro, and it shouldn't have been in the package, and they should have actually had this remote, which later came on as another controller for another drone, which is fine. Now I actually thought about that maybe this controller was not better, but I think that this controller because you have to put your phone on top here, there's a separation between what you can access, right? Because I've been hearing that controller, what you see on the screen, the new one that's compatible now with the Mavic 3 Pro, which is for the Mini 3 Pro, has been having problems with the software, and it freezes up on the screen, so you're not able to, let's say for example, everything's on the screen, you don't have a phone attached to it anymore, so now it's all on the screen. The screen freezes up, software has a hiccup, you can't close out any of the, like, you can't just close the, the app or whatever it's on the screen, and you have to press the power button, shut down the remote, and restart the remote. And I don't think that's a good idea as far as if the drone's still hovering and you have to power down the remote. I'm not too sure how that would work out. But that's why I started questioning it. So now I thought back about this controller and having the phone up here as an option. And if the app does crash, which it does crash, and it will crash. In some situations, the app will freeze up or crash, and you have to open it up again. I was able to even disconnect the plug to the phone and still have access to controlling the drone, because I'm not shutting the remote control. I'm just removing the plug out of the phone, and I am able to, if I have to reboot the phone, then I reboot the phone, but I'm not shutting down the remote. So for a little bit good you get as far as this remote, which is beautiful, and it actually works and looks more of a compatible remote for the package of a standard Mavic 3 Pro. There is that, maybe negative, not negative, but it's just something to think about if this remote does freeze up and there's no other option but to shut the remote off, because the whole screen has frozen up and you have to reboot the remote, meaning turning it off and turn it back on while the drone is up in the air. Yeah, it does become a little weird and questionable to kind of think about, but I think it would be nice to test it. I don't have the remote. I don't have the Mavic 3 Pro, so if I find a video about it, if someone has done it already, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will check, and I will leave the link to this new remote that is compatible with the Mavic 3 Pro now, if you're interested, and we'll see what happens. But much nicer remote. I've seen it, and feels good on the hands. And now I think looks much better with the standard Mavic 3 Pro.